address the topic at hand. Happy to introduce next to me Lorne, CEO of Operative, who will represent the sell-side technologists, having the advantage of addressing both the digital and broadcast side of the house. Next to him, Fraser Woollard, who is VP of Global Business Development at MediaOcean, to address the buy-side players in that space. And we're fortunate to have with us today Kevin McEvilly, who is the SVP Technology at Canvas Worldwide, an agency in the enviable position of belonging its client rosters, representing those major categories of automotive, studio, and beverage. So welcome everyone to the panel. I think it's fair to say, for those in the room, that our panel has the enviable distinction of having cut their teeth on what at times seemed like the baton death march towards buy or sell orientation. I mean, this has been a tough slog. We've seen everything in the network television space, from implementation of a tech standard, the use of value-added networks. In local, it was the Banner Initiative, ePort, Proposal XML. We've gone through all of the buzzwords from EDI to eBiz to the dreaded P word these days. And so, Lorne, I guess my question for you is, given what at times has been a fairly glacial pace of change here, are we now looking at basically deeper adoption of what we have on the plate today? Or are we closing in on a period of true innovation and are we on the cusp of some major breakthroughs in this space?
Has anyone talked about the chairs yet? By the way? I mean, kind of feel like we're a big stage with big white chairs, Kardashian chairs. What was the question? No. So, if I were just to take a step back, I think the glacial pace is not just a symptom or issue in media. I think it's a symptom from other industries as well, right? And far too often people wait to make change inside of their companies. And, if you took a page out of, let's say, the retail industry, a lot of the companies, including Walmart, Triad, and lots of Fortune 100 companies who were retailers, they either went away or got significantly minimized and dropped out of the Fortune 100 because they didn't invest in the right kind of technology to truly embrace this digitization process, right? And I don't mean banners, right? I mean the true combination of online and offline. And a lot of people waited, and now Amazon controls 53% of all retail, right? So the people who invested and got ahead of that, maybe they didn't retain their market share, but they certainly minimized their downside and are still competing for those consumers. The same thing is really happening in media, right? You've got media set up in these swim lanes where I sell local linear, or I sell an on-wire network. And effectively, what people need amongst all these changes is to have choice of market, but at the same time, offer simplicity and control as they point their inventory and their assets at those markets, right? And so, not only do I need to sell my inventory, my same inventory, in different ways, in different swim lanes, and get better at that, but I've got to go across them now. And I have to now deal with the combination of digital and linear and 3.0 and all this stuff now together if I am to take advantage of my audience, of my premium television or my premium content and take money from direct response, Facebook, and all the other markets people want to go after. So, I think the biggest mistake people are making right now is thinking they have more time. And that, they'll change when the buyers change. And I think people need to start thinking a little bit differently about that.
So it sounds to me like you really think that people need to get on the stick and adopting what's in there now and moving deeper into the participation.
Yeah, I think it's the concepts of supply chain management, people throw around the word AI, but supply chain management, effectively taking these swim lanes and turning them into supply chains. And, that, to me, is the only way that media is really going to grow. And that's why TIP was created. You know, we're doing something at Operative called the Council, which is a collection of station groups that are trying to plan from a technology perspective. It's like, all right, well, how do we choose the markets we want to be in? Like, so if local stations, for example, all want to be in a specific market, there's specific currencies that they need to trade in. There's specific pricing models, transaction methods that are all different based on the markets that people want to play in. And so if we can help them prepare for those markets and help them be Switzerland, help them be open, and give them those choice of markets, and make it as easy to buy as it is to buy something at Facebook, for example. You know, by Facebook, 50 billion, 80 billion, whatever they do, they send half of their 50 or 80 billion to an automated portal. No humans involved at all. You think about it. If you don't have 20 million to spend on Facebook, you go to an automated portal. Imagine spending $15 million in an automated portal, getting your exact audience, getting it optimized, dealing with your billing without one person getting involved. And effectively, that's what TV needs to do, but it's a much more complicated environment. But that complexity is a competitive advantage. Having multiple platforms, having multiple screens, having your consumers splintered in different places. If that can be sucked in and pointed and transacted with ease and then delivered with ease, well, that's how the local station groups and all media companies are going to grow, because the current business that everyone's in can only sustain so much, price hiking and other things.
So Fraser, let me ask you, where you're sitting on the buy side, where are you now seeing this evolution, and what are your thoughts on how the market progresses?
It's a really good question. So MediaOcean, if we look at what billings we process through our system, just to give a level set, it's about $150 billion a year that actually goes through our platforms. That's what agencies buy using our systems, working with many of your companies. It's about 50-50 split actually between traditional linear TV and digital. Programmatic TV is fraction of a percent, it's growing, but it's still a small percent. I think when we look at the transaction sets, it's very easy to get caught up with the digital workflows and say, wow, if only we could bring all those digital workflows over to the TV world. Here's the truth of it. It is still, from an agency's perspective, far more efficient in terms of their costs to buy a TV dollar than it is a digital dollar. TV is still a negotiated business. You have buyers negotiating with sellers. As we always say, you don't buy Prime and just cherry pick Prime without buying a lot of other stuff that you don't necessarily want. It's part and parcel of the negotiation process. The relationship is critical to that. And as such, the systems that were developed for the TV workflow are really about that. It's like a tennis match. It's a backwards and forwards communication. What we do is really the pipes. I've had a lot of companies approaching me over the last couple of years saying, we want to put DSPs in front of TV buyers. You put a DSP in front of a TV buyer, we'll plug all the inventory and it's going to be fantastic. It's going to be great. The reality is we did a partnership with Videology 5 years ago, actually I was on the date, it was 5 years ago, where we said we're going to put this automated platform in front of a TV buyer, enable them to say, this is what I'm looking for, hit a button, hit a sales database, and then get all the inventory sent back to them. The first day we released it, I went over to one of our major clients, sat with a spot buyer, and the first thing they said is, who do I pick up the phone with and negotiate with? We said, well, it's pre-negotiated, you don't have to go through it. They go, no. When something goes wrong, I need to be able to pick up the phone and shout at somebody. I want to hammer that price down. So subsequently that didn't go anywhere. It was a nice idea, it was trying to bring the technology to the people, but that's the issue. You've always got to start with actually what is the problem, and I think there are efficiency issues, and certainly with digital video, it was mentioned earlier on by Frank, the biggest problem with digital video from an agency, part of it is the processing, but it's the measurement. Nielsen, for all of its faults, when it says it's a 3.2 rating, it's a 3.2, everybody agrees. And the discrepancies, the invoice piece, which is really close to my heart, the invoice is practically zero. You mentioned Facebook, which is a great example. To buy on Facebook is truly amazing. We worked with them for a year because every invoice that Facebook sent to their agencies were 100% discrepant. They had DSOs of 300 days. Now, the Facebook, that's not a concern. They sit on a ton of cash. By working with them and actually helping to automate that and actually use some of the learnings from TV, we're able to drop that down by 50%. So I agree, it's somewhat glacial in the way that things have adapted, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. TV, as I said, is still far more efficient from an agency to process than digital. And I think it's actually digital that's going to go along with the learnings from TV.
Fascinating. So I'm curious, both for Lorne and for Fraser, do you see more opportunity towards provider cooperation between those sitting on the buy side and the sell side? I mean, it's been over the years something that we see all too infrequently. Do you think that, given the competitive nature of the market, we can see more of that? Fraser, perhaps you've got something going on in that space?
I mean, certainly, it's by its very nature, if you're going through a negotiation process, there is always somewhat of an adversarial nature, although I think we're hearing both sides of the equation. I mean, we acquired Envision to help us get insights into the TV sales process. Yesterday we announced a partnership with Wide Orbit, where both sides are now looking and saying, we have to bring down the costs, we have to enable it to scale, and as long as we have a central pipe by which we can communicate, you can bring those efficiencies, and you can still enable people to negotiate, go through that process, but just take some of the friction out. So it's helping to drive down some of the costs on that side. Again, a big focus for us is how do you now do connected TV, OTV, how do you get access to TV budgets and actually enable the efficiencies to be brought there. What we've been doing is partnering with companies like Vivo, CBS Interactive, SyncPack, Hulu, Pandora was mentioned earlier on. They all now access linear TV, radio budgets because they fit into the overall workflow. So rather than saying we're just going to plug into a DSP or just sell to digital buyers, they're now coming into the traditional workflow, fitting in, almost being dumbed down in some respects, but they're getting dollars. And again, I think that's what we're seeing in the reality of it. If they want to get access to those dollars, there are certain pipes that exist that buyer and seller can still transact on, and those efficiencies are there.
So I have a slightly different view, just a smidge different. I think that agencies are part of the problem. And I don't mean in the sense of they're not needed, right? Agencies are figuring themselves out. I'm sure we're
Thank you very much.
And some people might not like what I'm about to say, right? But what I really mean is agencies think about the world that they're in and the types of media that they're going to buy and specialize in, and sales organizations who have a wide variety of offerings, inventory, and data. I believe it's really on the sell side to take a leadership position and make it easier for the buy side to transact. And I think that if take the Wide Orbit press release yesterday, we're close partners with you guys too. It's different, but that's good if you're selling your inventory to an agency that uses MediaOcean. Right? But the reality is half their inventory at least is sold locally, right? So for them, it's like, okay, well maybe I just got smarter about how I transact in this single swim lane, but how am I going to transact locally, and then how am I going to control my pricing and inventory because I'm using the same inventory set? So for sellers, it's not just about automating with the buy side. It's about automating with the buy side and maintaining control and having an automation framework to deal with multiple buyer sets. Because I'm sure if you talk to any media companies in the room, they probably have 7, 8, 9 categories of buyers that use different transaction methods and pricing types and everything else. And then add digital and 3.0 to the equation, the days of automating one piece of the business, I think are, as a standalone solution, I think are short-term.
So, Kevin, let me ask you, as a consumer of the technology, strategies at MediaOcean. What do you see as the value of these partnerships? Is it really moving the needle for you as a buying service, or would you like to see more?
Jay, my answer 2 times in the course of this conversation. Yes, absolutely. I fully agree and I fully disagree. Let me start with the basics. Automation on the buy side is a fallacy. Dropping the walled garden with MediaOcean with Stripe and with other people is terrific. It really is. It helps the investment process, but we're a professional service. It helps them get to that recommendation faster. It's still a heavy touch process, and it's a heavy touch process through issuing an insertion order. And then it's a full manual process when we get to our finance teams who are struggling with this. So where is real automation taking place? How does it take it from our, the upfront part where we're a professional service, talking to our clients about how to be successful and meet their goals, and then honoring our fiduciary responsibility on the other side, it's their dollars. How are we transparent? How do we automate? How do we bring them through? Average age in a media company right now is probably 27 or 28 years old, and the tool that we all use most is Excel, regardless of what we see in these integrations. That's a mistake. Give me something that allows me to do full campaign management, 1 or 2 things in class. Give something that the finance team are not just clerks, but they can start to look for things that are going to make a difference in terms of cash flow management and how we deliver our clients, and that's real automation. Everything else is iterations of what we've been doing forever, a little faster, and with a lot more touch points.
I think if you think about what a lot of these large digital companies have done, like a Facebook or a YouTube, they've created a relationship with a brand that allows them to transact something at scale. It's just like a super easy button, right? And I think the relationship between the agencies and the sell side, I don't think it's just a story of integration. I think it's a story of a single product, right? Where a brand, can look at TV, the platform, which is an ecosystem of people that make that platform work, of buyers and sellers. It should be as easy to transact as some of these other ways that the brands can transact on their own without agencies. And so that's why I think, you're going to see a lot more large agencies and holding companies and large marketplaces, right? Sinclair, Nexstar, AT&T, Comcast, all these big mega mergers and these large holding companies really start to integrate in such a way where they're pulsing with each other as a single product, right? To your point on the delivery and the billing, and it's really death by 1,000 cuts. So the one way to make that go away is to really work much, much closer together, which is, that's how Operative and MediaOcean are working together right now with our digitally EDI release middle of last year, but really trying to integrate it so it's more fully automated and transparency where it's needed.
Fraser is getting depressed and needs to talk for a minute. And actually, I'm going to reverse that. It's something you and I have talked about forever. There is maybe an adversarial relationship during a negotiation, but the reality is we are an advocate for our client, and that's what that is. But when we go back to the client, we're an advocate for you. And if we're an advocate for you and we're bringing it forward saying this is the right opportunity, this is the right space, it's got to go all the way through the process. It just can't stop at the initial transaction, right? And I think that's where we continue to struggle. I'm sorry if I sound one tone about this, but that's where the real value is going to be. We win business based on ideas and trying to help people grow, and we lose based upon probably on a regular basis because 1 + 1 doesn't always equal 2. And we're struggling right now.
I just wanted to follow up, actually. You mentioned YouTube and Facebook. If you speak to those organizations, what's interesting is both of them are targeting TV dollars this year. Their growth area, which is growing, again, on the digital side, it's about 50-50 for us between linear and on that. Actually, if you look at linear TV, it's about 55 billion national, somewhere in the region about 15 billion local. So we do have certainly a ton of local business going through. On the digital side, you take out Facebook and Google, then it shifts dramatically to more linear. And linear's not going, as you saw on that chart, if you look at the local dollars, we've seen the same thing. It's flat, increasing slightly. The depth of TV that everybody's talking about, that certainly hasn't happened. But a lot of these digital video providers are now looking and saying, for us, growth is getting access to those TV dollars. If you're a TV buyer, you know that the viewership has shown be going down, but your costs are going up. You're having to buy 2 or 3 spots, whereas you used to have to buy 1 to get the same number of radio points. So there's been a big opportunity. That's why Pandora was very successful. That's why Hulu came on board at an early point to say, we can actually get access to those TV dollars. And we've seen there are more TV dollars to be spread around with some of these partners. For us, it's all about how do you enable that as efficiently as possible? Because if you add another dollar to the cost of Kevin's buyers, they're probably not going to want to do it. They're going to try and look at other ways to get that impression. If you can help reduce that and keep it in line with TV, you're going to see the dollars going through.
So it's interesting, Megan, that you touched on the point of the explosion of media options over the past 12, 15 years. And in fact, if we went back about 15 years, I don't think anyone's media dictionary would have shown the phrase ad tech. Yet over the past dozen or so years, we've seen an explosion of DSPs, SSPs, DMPs, the whole alphabet soup. What I'm curious to hear from you is, has that acted to drive more innovation in the areas you're all involved in? Or do you think it's created a sense of inertia based on customer confusion and people just having too many options to evaluate and not really sure what direction to go in?
Well, please.
I was going to say, I think, if I was over an agency, you're right, there are so many platforms you use to buy. I remember one of our largest agencies 3 years ago was working with 23 different demand-side platforms. One of them was used for a particular car account, because that car account had a relationship with the CEO over at that particular DSP. And a lot of the agencies are now going through and actually culling and saying, actually, there's a lot of tech we're paying for. Along with that, data, which, I'm passionate about data, but there is so much data out there that the question is actually how useful can it be when there is so much? I go back to my earlier point. Nielsen, as a trading currency, I think we'll separate currency from actually research and posting and everything else. Nielsen as a currency is fantastic because we both agree on that number. In digital, I've got my ad server, the publisher's got theirs, the numbers never match. We could both be using Google's ad server, the numbers don't match, it's discrepant, it causes yet more problems. So I think, there has been a lot of confusion. What I've seen though from an agency perspective are companies like Omnicom approaches have said, we're really interested in working with companies like 4C or a video ad that actually enable me to buy using my traditional platforms, using Nielsen, but then can sit on top of that and actually give me insight into each of these custom audiences. I think that's probably at the moment the way to go. The challenge again we've seen is when you try and buy, we had one agency do a deal with a very large cable network where they were buying, I think it was Toyota leaseholders or something like that. They spent 3x what they normally would on buying that campaign because you had to have custom data sets, you were trying to guarantee it against Toyota leaseholders. And in the end, it was zero. So it was a nice experiment to go through, they learned a lot from it, but again, once you start adding costs to the overall process, people then start to step back and say, actually, is it really worth it? Is doing all this work ultimately worth it, or am I better off sticking an ad in the Super Bowl and basically hitting anybody that they want for very little effort?
But I think it's worse than that too, because you're basically outsourcing something that's pretty strategic to your company. I mean, if you look at what happened in, let's call it online or digital, or this buy side, sell side, programmatic, basically, like if you were a print company, you've experienced a lot of challenges because you decided to use RTV and some of these other things. And all these ad tech companies who don't have other assets, right, or venture backed, figured out a better way to do it, but what people didn't realize was that that was a short-term thing and they were being disintermediated. And now Google is making a lot of money, right? And then you take some of these solutions that were created and you try to infuse them into linear, and that breaks down, as you talked about, right? This is more of a futures market, and but there's scarcity and negotiation and other things, and so that breaks down. And then you have an evolution of programmatic linear, right? But it has that same concept where people are charging 10 or 20% to use a programmatic tool, and all of a sudden the programmatic company who's offering automation is really becoming the marketplace and showing up on an RFP. So if your tech vendor is making money off selling your inventory in some way, well, then their motivation is really not to help you, right? And I believe, and I think a lot of people believe, that the real programmatic marketplaces are going to be the big media companies. And they're going to commingle simple, automated solutions and point those at different markets and transact just as easily as a programmatic tech solution can be, but it's all under one roof, right? And in that way, they've learned a lot from the ad tech community because they've seen that innovation take place. But if you're a programmatic tech company that's not part of the media company, you're not going to last. I mean, it's really that easy because it's a short-term, single way to do something that's evolving past that, and the media companies need to take that control.
Kevin, I see you want to get in on this.
It's interesting. We were talking about everything being siloed, and we'll sit in a meeting with our digital team, and we all have a case of vendor ADD, right? Someone will be talking to us about a platform, and we'll go, oh, pretty scroll, and we'll follow the next one that comes along. And then you go and you sit with your local investment team who are pragmatic and measured, and you go on in there and they say, sit back and wait. And in the end, they probably have been right more often than the rest of us as we've been chasing the pretty squirrel. And sadly, I don't know that we brought enough interesting things to the table for them to make them a little bit more effective. That's starting to change now, right? But you talked about it before, when there's a lot of cash coming in and there appears to be an endless source of income. But we've hit that point a long time ago. I don't have another dollar to spend on technology on the agency side unless I find a dollar of savings somewhere else. Somebody, except me, is going to get disintermediated in this process. And so what's the value you're going to bring to this?
Well, I think to both your points, given the state of play with margins, both buyers and sellers labor, can an industry continue to afford this, what I'll call ad tax, by having all of these intermediate players with their hand in the pocket? I think it's really becoming quite a conundrum. So the rumor is that we've got a few media sellers in the audience. So Lorne, I'm curious to get your perspective. If folks are looking to further their efforts around automation in the buy-sell process, what would your recommendation be to them?
I think there's a few things that I would recommend. Thinking about, things are evolving quickly inside of media companies. And the CTOs of those companies are starting to think differently about their media. And one of the themes I hear a lot is open. I was on the phone with Del Parks from Sinclair this morning, and we were talking about some of the changes in the space, and this idea of being open is something that the Sinclair group thinks a lot about as they build out their portfolio, right? So I would say number one is move away from swim lane thinking, where we've got to solve a single set of challenges within a single platform that transacts and delivers a certain way, and move towards more expansive thinking and think about how products can be thought about in a universal taxonomy, right? This, same concept as like Amazon. You go on Amazon, you bought a shower curtain, and I bought my big green egg charcoal, right? For my big green egg, right? So I wanted the big green egg charcoal. I really wanted it, right? I wanted to pay $75 for that bag. I didn't know where the shower curtain came from, right? And effectively what Amazon has done is they've created a universal product taxonomy where they hide the complexity of their merchants and who's who and where the inventory is going to get delivered and all the complexities that they don't need to see. And they know they're just getting a product. And it's a product that they want. and they're going to buy it the way they want to buy it, but then once it's bought, it goes into its different places to go and get executed, which might span multiple platforms. Things aren't just going to wind up in a linear traffic system, for example. And so that, I would say that macro thinking is one. Certainly the TIP initiative, I think, is another thing people should be leaning into. I know, Al and everyone in the room is leaning into that. And I think they're doing very good work and asking a lot of tough questions. I know you guys are involved with it too. Anything else that helps people collaborate. If you're interested in our council session, we're having it in Nashville in a few weeks at our user conference. I think the more that people can talk about, how to solve these bigger problems that are coming, and not waiting for other people to change, right? Taking that leadership position, and really starting to think about the future, because it's actually happening right now. So those would be some of my.
Kevin, any thoughts on how sales organizations can enhance their relationships with the buying community through automation or other means?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to what I talked about before. It's not just thinking about getting the order placed. We need, whether it's through the sales cycle, whether it's through the reconciliation process, for anybody who works with us to think about the finance teams and what the impact is on the client, that that's going to have an impact on us, and then work our way backwards. And larger, we have to look forward, but if the lesson about a media company is being progressive and looking forward, it's also about being pragmatic about other things. Every time that I have an investment person that doesn't need to go around for a post-log, when I can get that time back in, I can start to talk to the client about how to be successful as opposed to worrying about the day-to-day management. These are little things that 20 years into this, we still struggle with. And some quick automation, some thoughtfulness about how to execute that will get us a long way so we can have the bigger conversations. But I think that simpleness is, the lack of a solution for those simple issues is holding us back from a really great broader conversation.
So I think we're approaching time, but let me perhaps ask each of you a quick crystal ball question. We're sitting here a year from now. What do you think will have changed in the market as we assemble again a year from today?
Well, I think what you're going to see is the tech companies that the media businesses are relying on to run their operations, especially the ones with SaaS and cloud offerings, or the ones that feel safe, right, that have only interest in helping the media companies run a better business. I think you're going to see a lot more of them partnering with each other to help deliver some of those outcomes. And I think you're also going to see, as part of that, people realizing that some pieces of their infrastructure will never go away, but they need to change. We say something all the time when we think about the future of tech is how do we break the monolith, right? Like everyone in the room has these linear systems that have been around for a really long time. They demand a lot of bandwidth. They require lots and lots of money that goes to Oracle and other companies. And that dependency needs to be broken, and those systems need to be opened up. They don't necessarily need to be removed. So I think what you're going to see is a lot of tech companies working together, a lot of investment in cloud services around some of these legacy systems, and a lot more thinking about cloud-native technology and how that can span across a portfolio. And think about planning in a different way, meaning planners should be able to plan any type of media buy that comes in, a digital, a linear, a converged, an unwired, really in a way that the complexity is hidden. And so I'm starting to see that now, and I think in the next year, you're going to see some of the bigger media companies start to look and talk a lot differently about their tech stacks.
Again, if I put my agency hat on, the thing I hear the most, and I think it's going to continue, is from the CFOs, the FAs saying, help me reduce costs, wherever we can do automation, wherever we can bring those efficiencies. That's now number one. Since the trading desk arms have kind of disappeared and there were healthy margins in that business, that revenue's gone. There are other ways that they have to either increase revenue or help reduce costs. And I can tell you now that the drumbeat is loud and clear. Get rid of paper invoices, go electronic. They lose people like Google, Facebook, Amazon, who still traditionally send PDFs at the end of the month as opposed to going electronically. So to me, a win would be getting those costs down. Because then the agencies have more money to spend actually on what they should be doing, which is the planning, the smarts, buying them.
And what do you see for the year ahead?
I like what you said, and it's nice, you took my ideas at dinner last night. and played them. That's a wrap, right there. Lauren said something very interesting. I'm going to just tell you where I'm going to focus. I don't think it's anything else. I think you're exactly right about the planning function. Planners are another part of this professional service that move forward, and we give them bad tools. We give them no integration to what goes on. We can make the investment team's life easier by being more thoughtful about how we do planning, by treating that data as a real corporate asset. And that's something I don't think any of us do. It's an asset. It allows us to look forward. It allows us to look back. It allows us to report and actualize in ways that we haven't thought about before. So bringing some technology much earlier in the process and making it consistent on an agency level, not just on a client, I think would get us a long way to finding some opportunities.
Terrific. Do we have time for a question or two? Or is it a wrap? Well, thank you all for your insights. Appreciate it.